The official report says our unit was lost during a routine night reconnaissance operation in a remote mountain region that doesn't officially exist on any public map. That's how the U.S. Army buried it. Clean language, no emotion, no mention of the screaming. I was Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer, Alpha Team Leader, 3rd Platoon, 2nd Battalion. We were trained professionals, Afghanistan, Iraq, counterinsurgency, night ops, drones overhead, satellite comms locked in. Nothing supernatural, nothing mythical, just men, weapons, and orders. The mission briefing was simple. Track unusual movement detected by ISR assets near an abandoned Cold War listening post. Thermal signatures showed something walking upright, slowly, repeatedly entering and exiting the tree line. Command thought it was smugglers or insurgents testing routes. They were wrong. From the moment our boots hit the ground, the forest felt wrong. No insects. No birds. Night vision showed clear terrain, but our instincts kept screaming danger. We moved in a staggered column, suppressors mounted, comms low, hearts steady. At 0200 hours, we found the first sign that this was no normal op. A dead mule lay ripped open near a dry riverbed, its ribcage peeled back like it had been opened by hands. Not claws, not explosives. Hands. Large, human-shaped hands that left impressions deep in muscle and bone. I radioed it in. Command acknowledged, told us to proceed with caution. That's the phrase they use when they don't understand what's happening. 30 minutes later, we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, bipedal. Our point man, Corporal Hayes, froze and raised his fist. Through NVGs, I saw it between the trees, tall, thin, moving with a limp that mimicked an injured man. Its heat signature was wrong, too cold in places, too hot in others, like something wearing a human shape, but failing to regulate it properly. I whispered commands, lining up fields of fire. Possible HVI, I told command. Then it spoke. Not a growl. Not an animal sound. It spoke English, broken, uneven, like someone learning how to move their mouth for the first time. Help, please. Every rule of engagement screamed at us to identify, to verify. But something inside me knew this wasn't human. Its head turned too far. Its arms hung too long. When it stepped into moonlight, I saw its face, or what it tried to make into a face. Skin stretched tight over bone, eyes reflecting no emotion, mouth smiling without muscles. Before I could issue a fire command, it vanished, no sound, no heat trail, nothing. Seconds later, Private Lorne screamed. The sound cut off instantly. We spun, weapons up, but Lorne was gone. No blood. No drag marks. Just his rifle lying neatly against a tree, like it had been placed there. That's when the radio started acting up. Static, then voices that weren't ours, repeating our own call signs back to us. Alpha 1. Alpha 1. The creature was learning us. Hunting us. Command ordered immediate exfil, but the extraction zone was suddenly compromised. ISR showed movement circling us in patterns too precise for animals. As we moved, I realized the truth that still haunts me. This thing didn't attack like a beast. It isolated, observed, adapted. It walked like a man because it was studying men, and we were its training exercise. By the time we regrouped after losing Lorne, the forest had closed in around us like a living thing. Distances felt distorted. Landmarks we had just passed appeared again 20 minutes later, as if the terrain itself was looping. I ordered a short tactical halt to reassess, trying to keep my voice steady over the net while my hands shook just enough to notice. This wasn't panic, it was recognition. Every combat veteran knows the difference. Panic is chaos. Recognition is when your brain accepts a truth it doesn't want. We were being maneuvered. Not chased blindly, but herded. Our GPS units drifted off by hundreds of meters, then snapped back, then failed entirely. Satellite comms degraded to bursts of static mixed with whispering echoes that mimicked our own transmissions, delayed by seconds, then minutes. Sergeant Klein swore he heard his wife's voice through his headset, calling his name the way she used to before deployments. I confiscated his radio and smashed it against a rock, an act that should have felt irrational but didn't. At 0317 hours, Thermal picked up 3 separate signatures moving parallel to us. Same height, same gait, same wrong heat pattern. 3 of them, or one thing copying itself. We adjusted formation, overlapping sectors, weapons hot. That's when it tested us. A silhouette stepped into our rear arc, exactly matching Lorne's build and posture, his helmet slightly tilted the way he always wore it. Hayes nearly fired before I knocked his barrel down. The thing didn't attack. It just stood there, head twitching, as if buffering between expressions. Then it spoke again, this time perfectly in Lorne's voice. "Sarge, I can't feel my legs." The effect on morale was immediate and devastating. Training prepares you for enemy fire, IEDs, even torture scenarios. It does not prepare you to see your dead teammate asking for help in the dark. I ordered suppressive fire. The rounds hit center mass, punching through it like fog. No blood. No reaction. It stepped backward and dissolved into the tree line, reforming moments later somewhere else. That's when Klein broke. He ran, screaming, firing wildly into the woods. The creature let him go 10 meters before it moved. Fast this time, impossibly fast. One moment Klein was there, the next he was airborne, lifted like a child by something unseen. His screams turned wet, then stopped. His body dropped seconds later, folded neatly, neck twisted 180 degrees, eyes wide but empty. No struggle marks. Precision. We returned fire blindly, unloading magazines into shadows, but the forest swallowed every muzzle flash. Then came the worst part, silence. No movement. No voices. Just us, breathing too loud, realizing the thing didn't need to rush. It was thinning us out, learning which reactions produced the most fear. Command finally broke through with fragmented orders. Hold position, ISR inbound, air assets diverted. Diverted. That word still burns. They knew something was wrong and chose distance over answers. As dawn crept in, the creature changed tactics. It began walking openly between the trees, no longer hiding its form. Up close, it was taller than any man I'd known, joints bending at subtle wrong angles, skin shifting color to match the light like a malfunctioning chameleon. Its face rearranged itself every few steps. Sometimes Hayes, sometimes Lorne, sometimes a stranger that looked like a composite of all of us. It never attacked while we watched it. It waited for exhaustion, for attention to slip. Private Chin fired without orders, landing a solid hit that staggered it for the first time. The thing looked at him, not with anger, but curiosity. Then it mimicked the sound of the rifle shot perfectly and dropped flat, playing dead. Chin approached. I screamed at him to stop. He didn't make it 3 steps before the ground beneath him collapsed inward, like the earth itself had opened a mouth. When the dust settled, Chun was gone, and the creature stood where he had been, brushing dirt from its sleeves like a man finishing work. That's when I understood the final truth of our situation. This thing wasn't guarding territory. It wasn't defending itself. It was practicing, refining its understanding of soldiers, of weapons, of fear responses. And somewhere above us, satellites watched shapes move on a screen, unable, or unwilling, to name what was walking below them like a man. By first light, our unit no longer resembled a fighting force. We were a collection of exhausted men clinging to training out of habit, not confidence. Ammo was down to less than 50% across the team, medical supplies nearly gone, and every one of us showed the same 1,000-yard stare, usually reserved for survivors of mass casualty events. I tried to re-establish command structure, but leadership feels fragile when reality itself refuses to obey rules. We set up a hasty perimeter on elevated ground overlooking what should have been our extraction route. Instead of a valley, there was a shallow basin littered with old concrete foundations, remnants of the abandoned listening post. None of this had appeared on mission imagery. It was as if the site only revealed itself once we were broken enough to see it. The creature, or creatures, used that moment to escalate. Radios came alive simultaneously, all on different channels, broadcasting overlapping voices of dead soldiers, living soldiers, even command staff we recognized from briefings. Perfect imitations. Perfect timing. Hold your position. Exfil in 5 mics. You are clear to fire. Conflicting orders designed to fracture us. I ripped the batteries out of every radio and gathered the men close, forcing eye contact, reminding them that only direct commands counted. That bought us maybe 10 minutes. The thing emerged again, this time from the concrete ruins, standing fully exposed in the growing daylight. Without darkness to hide in, its disguise faltered. I saw its true proportions, rib cage too wide, spine segmented like it could compress and extend, hands with too many joints. Its face settled on one final configuration, mine. Not a rough copy, perfect down to the scar on my left cheek and the gray starting to creep into my beard. It spoke in my voice, using my cadence, my authority. "Weapons down," it said calmly. "This is Staff Sergeant Mercer. Stand fast." 2 of my men hesitated. That hesitation cost them their lives. The creature lunged with unnatural speed, arms elongating mid-strike, piercing body armor like it was paper. No roar. No rage. Just efficient movement. I ordered a full volley, aiming not center mass but at joints, head, anything that looked structural. That's when we learned it could bleed. Thick, dark fluid spilled onto the concrete, steaming where it touched sunlight. The creature recoiled, not in pain but surprise. It hadn't expected resistance. It shrieked then, a sound layered with multiple voices crying out of sync, and the forest answered. Shapes moved in the tree line. More of them. Not identical but similar, like variations of the same failed template. That was when air support finally arrived. 2 fast movers screamed overhead, unleashing precision-guided munitions into the basin. The blast was apocalyptic. Trees flattened, concrete shattered, the ground heaved beneath us. I was thrown hard, helmet cracked, vision bleeding white. When I came to, the world was quiet in that ringing way that follows near death. Smoke hung thick, and the ruins were gone, replaced by a crater glowing with residual heat. Of the creatures, there was no sign. Of my men, only 3 were still alive. Medevac birds landed minutes later, crews silent, faces pale. No questions. No debrief on site. We were sedated before the rotors even spun up. I woke in a sealed facility with no windows and no clocks. A man in civilian clothes told me the operation never happened, that my unit died in a training accident, that my memories were the result of acute stress hallucinations. He slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table and promised medical retirement if I signed. I asked him one question. Why were my boots still covered in black residue that wouldn't wash off? He didn't answer. He just nodded to the guards. Years later, I still hear my voice on dead radio channels in my dreams, issuing orders I never gave. And sometimes when I catch my reflection at the wrong angle, it smiles a second too late. That's how I know it wasn't all destroyed. Something learned enough to leave. And somewhere, it's still walking upright, perfecting the way it pretends to be one of us. The aftermath of the operation unfolded in layers, each more disturbing than the last. Officially, I was declared medically unfit for continued service due to combat-related psychological trauma, a label that followed me into civilian life like a shadow I couldn't outrun. My surviving men disappeared into different facilities, scattered across states, forbidden from contacting one another. When I tried to reach them through unofficial channels, every trace led to dead ends, records sealed, numbers reassigned, names scrubbed from active databases. It was as if the Army hadn't just silenced the incident, but erased the people who lived through it. 6 months after my discharge, I was contacted by a contractor claiming to work under a joint task force tied to DARPA and Army intelligence. He didn't deny the creature. He didn't even pretend it was an isolated incident. Instead, he called it a non-human adaptive mimic, a designation so clinical it made my stomach turn. According to him, similar encounters had been logged sporadically since the early Cold War, always near remote installations, always involving elite units, always ending with sanitized reports and classified burials. The creature wasn't extraterrestrial, he said, not in the way people imagine. It was something older, something that learned to survive by observing predators and becoming them. Soldiers were its most valuable study subjects because soldiers adapt under pressure. It invited conflict to evolve. The reason our unit was sacrificed, he implied, was data. Battlefield data. I demanded to know why they kept sending men in after realizing the threat. He answered without hesitation, because containment wasn't possible, but prediction might be. They needed to know how it hunted, how it copied, how long it took to master new weapons, new voices, new faces. He showed me grainy footage from other operations, Delta operators firing on silhouettes that turned into teammates mid-frame, night vision feeds where a man walked out of a blast cloud untouched, audio logs of commanders giving orders they swore they never issued. The most disturbing file was labeled Mercer Variant. It contained footage from a drone angle I didn't remember, showing the creature wearing my face, issuing commands to my men while I lay unconscious meters away. That meant something else had walked out of that crater, using my identity, while I was being evacuated. The contractor warned me that the program had shifted focus. They were no longer trying to destroy the mimics. They were trying to control them, study their learning patterns, test whether limited cooperation was possible. He asked if I would consult. I refused. 2 weeks later, my house was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just one thing left behind. A perfectly folded Army patrol cap placed on my kitchen table, still warm. After that, the dreams stopped being dreams. I'd hear boots pacing outside my bedroom door, pauses that matched my own old patrol rhythm. My phone would light up with calls from my own number, voicemail messages of me breathing on the other end. I reported everything. No one responded. The final contact came in the form of an unmarked envelope containing a single document stamped classified. Eyes only, accidentally delivered or deliberately leaked. It detailed a planned deployment of the Mimic into an active combat zone, not as an enemy, but as an asset, a force multiplier capable of infiltrating any unit, any command structure, undetected. The last line of the document was handwritten, not typed. If it can walk like a man, it can be ordered like one. That was when I realized the real horror wasn't the creature in the forest. It was the certainty that we had taught it everything it needed, and then handed it a uniform. I'm writing this now because the safeguards finally failed, and the quiet I relied on for survival has collapsed in on itself. For years after the break-in, I lived like a ghost, never staying in one place long enough to form habits, never allowing routines to solidify into patterns someone else could track. I moved apartments the way other people change phone numbers, always paying in cash when possible, always choosing places with multiple exits and no security cameras facing my door. I stopped attending veteran events, not because I didn't miss the men, but because shared memories were liabilities. I stopped answering unknown numbers, stopped opening emails that didn't come from verified sources, stopped trusting mirrors when my reflection lingered a fraction of a second too long. Even mundane things became suspect. Footsteps behind me, reflections in windows, voices that sounded familiar but arrived at the wrong moment. The Army pension arrived on time every month without fail, a sterile, silent reminder that someone, somewhere within the system still tracked my existence closely enough to keep me compliant. It wasn't generosity, it was containment. A way of keeping an asset calm, predictable, and quiet. For a long time, I convinced myself it had worked. I told myself the nightmare had burned itself out in that crater overseas, that whatever we encountered had been destroyed or contained or lost to history, like so many other classified failures. I almost believed it. Then last winter, a news clip surfaced and vanished within hours. It appeared briefly on a foreign media site before being scrubbed completely, as if it had never existed. But I saw it. I recorded it. It showed helmet cam footage from an ongoing operation overseas. A U.S. patrol advancing through bombed-out urban rubble, exchanging controlled bursts of fire with an unseen enemy. The footage was routine at first, hand signals, bounding movements, disciplined spacing. Then the clip froze for a single frame, a compression glitch maybe, or something else. The camera had caught a squad leader mid-command, arm raised, fingers signaling a halt. His face was older, weathered by years I hadn't lived, but unmistakably mine. Same scar, same posture, same unconscious habit of standing slightly off-center to keep a clear field of fire while maintaining command presence. It wasn't resemblance. It was identity. I felt something inside me fracture. Not fear, not shock, but recognition. I contacted the contractor using the last secure channel he'd given me years ago, a method so obsolete it should have been impossible to trace. This time, he answered immediately, as if he'd been waiting. He didn't deny what I'd seen. He didn't ask questions. He spoke like a man confirming the weather. The program, he said, had gone operational 3 years prior. Early tests showed exceptional results. The mimic, no longer referred to as an anomaly or threat, had demonstrated unprecedented effectiveness. It could infiltrate insurgent networks without detection, extract intelligence in real time, and even lead U.S. troops through contested zones with zero suspicion. Casualty rates dropped dramatically at first. Promotions followed. Commendations were awarded. Then anomalies began to surface. Units reported conflicting memories of who had given critical orders. Body camera footage showed soldiers responding to commands issued by leaders later confirmed to be somewhere else entirely. Friendly fire incidents rose without clear explanations. Investigations stalled at the same impasse every time. Unclear command authority, corrupted logs, lost or overwritten recordings. The mimic had learned bureaucracy, learned how humans bury mistakes under paperwork and plausible deniability. According to the contractor, they could no longer determine how many mimics were active. Replication wasn't supposed to be possible, but adaptation always outpaced prediction. It doesn't just copy men anymore, he said quietly. It copies systems. When the call ended, I sat alone in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, wondering how long it had been since I'd truly been alone. 2 nights after that call, the power in my house went out without warning. No storm, no grid alerts, just sudden darkness, thick and absolute. I didn't move at first. I sat at the kitchen table with my pistol laid out in front of me, not pointed anywhere, not shaking, just present. The house felt different immediately, heavier somehow, like the air had been compressed. I listened. Footsteps appeared on my porch a minute later, slow, deliberate, familiar. Not the careless gait of a trespasser, not the cautious steps of law enforcement. These steps knew the spacing of the boards, knew where the noise would carry. There was no fear then, just exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness that comes when running finally loses its purpose. The door didn't open. Instead, my phone buzzed on the table, lighting the room for a brief second. A single text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "You trained me well." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. At dawn, military vehicles surrounded the block with practiced efficiency, unmarked, quiet, disciplined. Men in uniform approached my house without urgency, weapons slung, posture relaxed. They escorted me out with professional courtesy, addressing me as Staff Sergeant, like I'd never left the service. No cuffs, no explanations, no resistance required. As we drove away, I caught my reflection in the vehicle's darkened window. For a moment, a single, terrifying moment, I couldn't tell if the man staring back blinked when I did. I don't know where they're taking me, and I don't expect answers when we arrive. But I understand now why this story was buried so deeply, sealed under layers of classification and denial. Not to hide a monster, but to protect a strategy. If this account ever surfaces, if anyone reads it and wonders why it sounds too real, too detailed, too precise, understand that realism is the point. The most effective predator is not the one that terrifies you, it's the one that convinces you it belongs. Our unit wasn't hunted because we were weak. We were hunted because we were useful. We provided data, behavior, doctrine, identity. Whatever walks like a man now wears our ranks, speaks our language, understands our procedures, and follows orders better than we ever did. It doesn't need to rebel. It only needs to comply. So if you ever hear a familiar voice in the dark telling you everything is under control, don't answer. Don't look. And don't assume the man giving the order is human. This document was never meant to be read outside a secure room, but someone failed, and that failure is why I'm writing this now. The safeguards finally collapsed after years of silence and controlled distance. Following the post-incident containment breach, subject, Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer was placed under passive monitoring, not confinement. The decision was intentional. Mercer was easier to manage when he believed he was free. He moved often, avoided routines, disengaged from military communities, and demonstrated textbook asset self-isolation behavior. Monthly pension payments were maintained to reinforce stability and prevent inquiry. For a time, the strategy worked. Then an unauthorized foreign media clip surfaced briefly during winter operations overseas. Helmet cam footage from an active patrol advancing through urban rubble. Analysts flagged the video for removal within hours, but not before Mercer viewed it. A single frozen frame revealed a squad leader issuing hand signals. Facial analysis confirmed a 99.8% match to Mercer, including scar placement, posture bias, and non-conscious stance adjustments developed during years of infantry command. Mercer initiated contact using a deprecated secure channel provided years earlier by a civilian intelligence contractor. The contractor confirmed the inevitable. The program had gone operational. Early deployments of the adaptive mimic produced extraordinary results. Deep infiltration, command-level impersonation, reduced casualties, and flawless compliance within active units. But success created blind spots. Reports began surfacing of conflicting command memories, orders without origin, body cam footage showing leaders present in two locations at once. Investigations failed uniformly due to corrupted logs, overwritten recordings, and unclear chains of authority. The entity had learned not just how to mimic soldiers, but how military systems erase their own mistakes.